On Christmas Eve, my parents handed me a plane ticket, one suitcase, and told me not to come back. My name is Lily Anderson. I'm 25 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that Christmas was supposed to be about family, warm lights in the windows, the smell of cinnamon in the kitchen, laughter around the dinner table. But in my family, Christmas was never about warmth. It was about appearances. My parents cared deeply about how our family looked to the outside world. The house had to be perfect. The decorations had to match. The photos posted online had to show a happy, successful family. And for years, I tried my best to fit into that picture, but I was never quite what they wanted. My father believed success meant power and money. He ran a small financial consulting firm and spent most of his time reminding everyone how important reputation was. My mother cared about status. She loved charity events, elegant dinners, and conversations where she could mention the right schools and the right neighborhoods. And then there was me, quiet, independent, and apparently inconvenient. I wasn't interested in the high society lifestyle my parents loved. I preferred working, studying, and building something of my own. That difference created tension in our house long before the Christmas that changed everything. My older brother Daniel was the opposite of me. He loved the spotlight and had no trouble following my parents' expectations. He joined my father's business after college and quickly became the son my parents loved to talk about. Meanwhile, I chose a different path. I studied international communications and dreamed about working abroad someday. I thought my parents would at least respect the ambition. Instead, they saw it as rebellion. "You're throwing away opportunities here," my father told me during my last year of college. "I'm creating my own opportunities," I replied. That conversation didn't end well. From that moment, the distance between us grew wider. But I still believed that, deep down, we were still a family until Christmas Eve 3 years ago. That evening started like every other holiday gathering in our house. The living room glowed with golden lights from the Christmas tree. My mother had decorated every corner of the house with expensive ornaments. Relatives and family friends filled the house with cheerful conversations. On the surface, everything looked perfect, but something felt strange. My parents were acting unusually formal with me. Not angry, not cold, just distant. During dinner, my father barely spoke to me. My mother smiled politely but avoided real conversation. I thought maybe they were still upset about my plans to work abroad. After dinner, my father stood up from the table. "Lily," he said. "Yes? Come with us." His tone was calm but serious. My mother followed him into the study room, and I walked behind them with a growing feeling of unease. When we entered the room, my father closed the door. Then he sat behind his desk. My mother stood beside him, with her arms folded. On the desk sat something small, a single envelope. My father pushed it toward me. "What's this?" I asked. "Your future," he said. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a plane ticket, a one-way flight, leaving the country tomorrow morning. I looked up in confusion. "What is this?" My mother spoke this time. "It's an opportunity." "For what?" "To start a new life." My stomach tightened. "A new life where?" "Europe," my father answered. I stared at them. "You're sending me away?" My father leaned back in his chair. "We're helping you pursue your dream of working internationally. But I never said I wanted to leave tomorrow." My mother finally sighed. "Lily, let's not make this dramatic." Dramatic. That word again, the same word she had used my entire life whenever I questioned something. I looked back at the envelope. "Why is this one way?" My father's answer came quickly. "Because you won't be coming back." The room suddenly felt smaller. "What do you mean I won't be coming back?" My father's voice remained calm. "You've made it clear you don't belong in this family's plans anymore." My chest tightened. "So you're kicking me out?" "We prefer to call it independence," my mother said. I looked between them, trying to understand how this moment had arrived so suddenly. Outside the study door, I could still hear Christmas music playing in the living room, guests laughing, glasses clinking, the world continuing like nothing was wrong. But inside that room, my life was being quietly dismantled. My father pointed toward the door. "There's a suitcase in the hallway," he said. "One suitcase? That's all you'll need." My hands trembled slightly. "This is insane." "No," my father replied calmly. "This is practical." My mother softened her tone slightly. "You're young. You'll figure things out. And if I don't?" My father shrugged. That's your responsibility. I stood there in silence, staring at the plane ticket. Christmas Eve. 1 suitcase. 1 flight. No way back. At that moment, I believed that was the worst thing my parents could ever do to me. I had no idea that years later, they would come looking for me again. Not because they missed me, but because of something they believed belonged to them. My inheritance. The next morning, I left the house before sunrise. No dramatic goodbye, no hugs, no one standing at the door wishing me luck. My suitcase sat beside me in the back of the taxi as the driver pulled away from the only home I had known for 22 years. I looked back once through the window. The house was quiet. The Christmas lights were still glowing faintly on the porch, like nothing had happened inside. For a moment, I wondered if my parents were watching from the windows, but no one appeared. It felt strange how quickly a life could be packed into 1 suitcase. Clothes, a few books, my laptop, and the plane ticket that had changed everything. At the airport, I sat alone in the departure area while families around me laughed and exchanged Christmas gifts. Children ran across the floor holding candy canes. Couples hugged goodbye. Meanwhile, I stared at the boarding pass in my hand and tried to convince myself that I wasn't being abandoned. My parents had said it was an opportunity, a chance to build my own life. But the truth was simple. They didn't want me anymore. The flight to Europe lasted almost 9 hours. I didn't sleep. I just watched the clouds outside the window and wondered what my life would look like when I landed. I had a small amount of savings from my part-time jobs in college, enough to survive for a few months if I was careful. But I didn't have a job. I didn't have a home. I didn't even have a real plan, just a one-way ticket and a suitcase. When the plane finally landed, the cold winter air hit me the moment I stepped outside the airport. It was different from the winters back home, sharper, quieter. Everything felt unfamiliar. The streets, the language, even the smell of the air. For the first few weeks, survival became my only focus. I rented a tiny room above a bakery in a narrow street. The space was barely bigger than a closet, but it had a bed, a desk, and a small window that overlooked the city rooftops. It was enough. During the day, I searched for jobs, any job. I printed copies of my resume and walked into offices, cafes, and small businesses. Some people were polite, others barely looked at me. A few laughed when they heard my limited local language skills. But eventually, someone gave me a chance. A small international marketing agency needed an assistant. The pay was low, the hours were long, but it was a start. I threw myself into the work completely. Every late night, every extra project, every opportunity to prove that I deserved to be there. Slowly, things started to change. My language improved. My responsibilities grew. Within a year, I was managing small campaigns for international clients. Within 2 years, I had been promoted twice. For the first time in my life, I felt something I had never felt back home. Respect. Not because of my family name, not because of appearances, but because of the work I was doing. My life slowly became stable. I moved into a better apartment. I made friends. I built a career. And little by little, the pain of that Christmas Eve faded into something distant. My parents never contacted me. Not once. No messages. No emails. No holiday cards. Daniel sent a few texts during the first year, but those eventually stopped too. It was as if I had disappeared from their lives completely. At first, that silence hurt, but eventually, it became freedom. 3 years passed. 3 quiet, productive years where I built a life that belonged entirely to me. And then one afternoon, everything changed again. I was sitting in my office reviewing a marketing proposal when my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello? There was a short pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in 3 years spoke on the other end of the line. Lily. My entire body went still. I recognized that voice immediately. My father. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. The memories of that Christmas Eve flooded back instantly. Finally, I forced the words out. Why are you calling me? My father cleared his throat. His voice sounded different, less confident than I remembered. We need to talk. I let out a small laugh. We haven't talked in 3 years. This is important. I leaned back in my chair. What could possibly be important now? There was another pause. Then he said something that made my stomach twist. It's about the inheritance. Inheritance? I frowned. What inheritance? Your grandmother's. My heart skipped. My grandmother had always been the one person in the family who treated me with genuine kindness. She used to send me letters even after I moved overseas, but I hadn't heard from her in months. What about Grandma? I asked quietly. My father's voice became very careful. She passed away last month. The words hit me harder than I expected. I closed my eyes for a moment. I didn't even know she was sick. We didn't think it was necessary to tell you. Not necessary. The same cold logic as always. I swallowed the anger rising in my chest. So why are you calling now? My father exhaled slowly. Because there's been a complication. What kind of complication? His answer came in a low voice. You were named in the will. The room suddenly felt silent. What? Your grandmother left you part of her estate. I didn't know what to say. But before I could respond, my father added something else. Something that explained exactly why he had finally called me again after 3 years. And we need you to give it back. For a few seconds after my father said those words, I didn't respond. I simply sat in my office chair, staring at the wall across the room while the phone pressed against my ear. 3 years. 3 entire years of silence. No calls, no messages, not even a simple, "How are you?" And now the first thing he said to me was that he needed something. My inheritance. I let out a quiet breath. You're serious, I said. Yes, my father replied. The calmness in his voice almost made me laugh. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You sent me away on Christmas Eve with 1 suitcase, told me not to come back, and now you're calling because you want money? It's not that simple. It sounds exactly that simple. There was a pause on the line. Then my father spoke again, this time sounding slightly irritated. Your grandmother made a mistake. My fingers tightened around the phone. A mistake? Yes. What kind of mistake? She included you in the inheritance. The sentence hung in the air like a bad joke. I leaned back in my chair. So you're calling to correct her will? That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said. My father exhaled slowly. Lily, this isn't about emotions. It's about fairness. Fairness. The word felt almost unbelievable. You're talking about fairness? I asked. Yes. After what you did to me? Another pause. Then my father said something that revealed everything. You chose to leave. I almost dropped the phone. I chose to leave? Yes. You bought the ticket. You accepted it. The calm confidence in his voice made my chest burn. For a moment, I couldn't even find the right words. Then I laughed. Not a happy laugh, a tired one. You really believe that, don't you? I believe in responsibility. I closed my eyes and shook my head. You kicked your daughter out of the house on Christmas Eve. You were an adult. I was 22. You wanted independence. That wasn't independence, I said quietly. That was exile. The silence on the phone stretched longer this time. Finally, my father spoke again. We're not calling to argue. Then why are you calling? Because the inheritance should stay in the family. I raised an eyebrow. Am I not family? Another pause. Then he said it. The sentence that revealed his real thinking. You made it clear you didn't want to be part of this family anymore. I felt a strange calm settle over me. No, I said softly. You made that clear. He ignored the comment. The estate includes the house, investments, and several properties. My stomach tightened slightly. Grandma had always lived comfortably, but I never imagined the estate was that large. And? I asked. And your share is significant. How significant? He hesitated. Then he answered, several million. For a moment, I genuinely thought I had misheard him. Did you say millions? Yes. The number hung in the air between us. Suddenly, everything made sense. The phone call, the urgency, the sudden interest in my life again. It wasn't about family. It was about money. I leaned forward on my desk. And how much do you want back? All of it. The bluntness of the answer made me laugh again. All of it? Yes. You're not even pretending to negotiate. You didn't earn that money. My eyes narrowed. My grandmother gave it to me. She made a mistake. She made a decision. You manipulated her. That accusation stopped me cold. What? You visited her before she passed away. My heart skipped. How do you know that? She told us. I frowned. And? You convinced her to include you in the will. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You think I tricked my grandmother into leaving me money? It wouldn't be the first time someone manipulated an elderly person. The anger that had been slowly building inside me suddenly flared. You're unbelievable, Lily. No, I interrupted. You don't get to accuse me of something like that. My father's voice hardened. The lawyer will contact you. For what? To arrange the transfer. I laughed again, this time louder. You think I'm just going to hand it over? It's the right thing to do. No, I said calmly. The right thing would have been telling me when my grandmother was sick. That wasn't necessary. The right thing would have been calling me sometime during the last 3 years. We respected your independence. I shook my head slowly. You didn't respect anything. My father's patience was clearly wearing thin. This conversation isn't productive. No, I agreed. It's not. So think about what I said. I will. And Lily, yes? The longer you fight this, the more complicated it will become. I leaned back in my chair again. Complicated for who? For everyone. I smiled slightly, even though he couldn't see it. Good. There was a long pause. Then my father said one final thing before ending the call. You always were the difficult one. The line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone onto my desk. The office around me felt quiet again. 3 years ago, my parents had sent me away with one suitcase. Now they wanted something from me. But the biggest surprise wasn't the inheritance. It was something I realized during that phone call. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of them anymore. For the rest of that day, I couldn't focus on work. My laptop screen stayed open in front of me, but my mind kept replaying the conversation with my father. Your share is several million. The number still sounded unreal. When my grandmother wrote letters to me over the years, she never mentioned anything about money. She talked about small things. Her garden, the books she was reading, the way the house felt too quiet after my grandfather passed away. She used to end every letter the same way. Remember, Lily, a person's worth is not decided by the people who fail to see it. At the time, I thought she was simply trying to comfort me. Now I wondered if she knew something I didn't. That evening, I walked home slowly through the cold streets, my hands tucked inside my coat pockets. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, and the quiet hum of traffic filled the air. 3 years ago, I had arrived in this city with nothing but one suitcase. Now I had a life, a job I loved, friends who respected me, a small apartment that actually felt like home. And suddenly, my past had decided to show up again. When I reached my apartment, I found an email waiting for me. The subject line made my stomach tighten. Estate of Margaret Anderson. Legal notification. My grandmother's full name. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened the email. It was from a law firm back home. The message was formal and polite. It confirmed what my father had said. My grandmother had passed away 4 weeks ago. Her estate was currently being processed. And according to her will, I had been named as one of the beneficiaries. My hands trembled slightly as I continued reading. The lawyer explained that the estate included several properties, investment accounts, and personal assets. The total value was larger than I had imagined, but the most shocking part wasn't the amount. It was the percentage. My grandmother hadn't just left me a small portion. She had left me almost half. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. Half. Which meant my father and Daniel would have to split the rest. No wonder my father sounded desperate on the phone. Then I noticed something else in the email. A second attachment. Personal letter. Margaret Anderson. My heart skipped. A letter? From Grandma. I opened the document slowly. The first line made my eyes sting immediately. My dear Lily, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer here to say these words to you in person. I swallowed hard and kept reading. I know your parents believe they can control the story of our family. They have always cared too much about appearances and not enough about truth. My chest tightened. Grandma had always been more observant than people realized. When you visited me last year, I could see the pain you were trying to hide. You said very little about what happened on Christmas Eve, but I did not need many details to understand. I remembered that visit. I had flown home quietly without telling my parents, just to see her. We had spent an afternoon drinking tea in her living room. She never pressured me for explanations. She just listened. Your parents believe they are protecting the family name, but in doing so, they forgot something important. Family is not about control. Family is about loyalty. My eyes moved to the next paragraph. You were the only person in this family who visited me without expecting something in return. A tear rolled down my cheek before I realized it. That is why I made the decision I did. I want you to have the freedom that was denied to you when you were younger. My hands tightened around the edge of the table. The final paragraph felt like she was speaking directly to me. Your parents may try to convince you that you do not deserve this inheritance. do not believe them.